What to do in the first 30 seconds of a tough conversation before you lose control. Most people think they lose control in conversations because they don't know what to say. That's not the problem. You lose control in the first 30 seconds when the conversation shifts against you. And once that moment passes, it's hard to recover because in that moment, you're not thinking clearly, you're reacting. Everything is fine until it isn't. A conversation shifts, someone pushes back, questions your plan, changes direction without warning. And now you're on the spot. You feel it immediately. The tone changes, the pressure rises, and all eyes are on you. This happens in meetings with clients, in conversations where the stakes actually matter. And in that moment, you don't get time to prepare. You're expected to respond right now. So what you do in the next few seconds doesn't just affect that moment. It decides whether they listen to you or start pushing against you. This is where it breaks down. Even when you know exactly what you want to say, it still doesn't come out right because in that moment, something else takes over. The moment that happens, your brain's out of communication mode and into protection mode. Your focus changes. You're not thinking about clarity anymore. You're thinking about how this looks, what this means, what happens next. That's a moment where things start to break down. You start second guessing yourself. You feel the need to explain more, defend your position, prove your point. But now you're not responding with control. You're reacting. And once that happens, the conversation starts controlling you. This is the point where most people get stuck. It feels like you have to choose. Do you say what you really think and risk the relationship, or do you stay quiet and protect the situation? Be honest or keep the connection. And either way, it feels like you lose. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is you don't know how to do both at the same time. This is where it's decided because the first 30 seconds decide everything to come after that. Whether they listen or shut down. Whether the conversation moves forward or turns into resistance. Most people waste that window. They jump straight into explaining, correcting, defending, and that's where they lose control. They go straight to the content, trying to prove they're right, trying to fix the problem immediately, trying to win the moment. But that's not what the other person responds to. They respond to intent, why you're saying it, what they think you're trying to do. And if that feels off, it doesn't matter how right you are. You lose them. So the goal isn't to win the argument. It's to stabilize the conversation first. Once it's stable, you can think clearly. Then you communicate effectively. And then you can influence what happens next. But if it's unstable, nothing works. Here's what you actually do in that moment. Not in theory, in real time. Here are two things you need to establish immediately: alignment and control. Miss one of these, and the conversation starts working against you. Step 1, align before you argue. Before you make your point, you align. You make it clear you're not working against them. You're working towards something that matters to both of you. Because the moment they feel like you're opposing them, they stop listening. Not because of what you said, but because of what they think you mean. Then you remove the second problem, threat. If they feel challenged, they defend. If they feel respected, they engage. That doesn't mean you agree. It means you communicate in a way that keeps the conversation open. And that's control, not submission. Only after you've done that, then you make your point. But you don't drop it all at once. You guide it in with something like this. Here's something we should look at before we move forward. Or maybe, let me walk you through something quickly. Now they're not resisting, they're listening. So what does this sound like in the real world? It sounds more like this. Look, I understand what you're trying to do here. Or, I'm on board with where you want this to go. Or even, here's where I think we might run into a problem. Now, you're not pushing back, you're guiding the conversation, and that changes everything. When you do this right, you stay composed, clear, and in control. You don't get pulled into reaction. You don't lose your position, and you don't lose the relationship. You're heard, even if they disagree. This is the difference under pressure. Most people react. High-level communicators control the moment. They don't try to prove they're right. They make it possible to be heard and listened to. Because if you don't control this moment, you fall right back into reacting. And once that starts, it repeats. That's what I break down in this next video, how that cycle works and how to stop it before it takes over. I'll see you there.